Hello, you're watching All 24 News, and these are today's top stories. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns that the elimination of the last Ukrainian soldiers present in the port city of Mariupol would put an end to all negotiations with Moscow. North Korea has test-fired a new weapon system that it claims will boost the efficiency of its tactical nuclear weapons. Plus, you'll be watching as worshippers assembled for early morning prayers. Zionist forces stormed the Al-Aqsa mosque compound 2 days after holding hundreds at the site in another raid. And we kick off our news with the latest in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling on the world to prepare for Russia's possible use of its nuclear weapons. Let's have a listen.
We should not wait for the moment when Russia decides to use its nuclear weapons. The world must be prepared for that. Prepare in different ways, manufacture antidotes, shelters, and bombs. But we also have to talk to them, sign documents and pressure their economy so that they don't even think about it. That's what I mean. They can use any weapon, I'm sure, and we can't trust them. So what are the security guarantees for us?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns that the elimination of the last Ukrainian soldiers present in the port city of Mariupol, besieged by Russian forces, would put an end to all negotiations with Moscow.
The elimination of our soldiers, of our men, in Mariupol will put an end to all negotiations.
The Russian Ministry of Defense announced that it has bombed a military factory on the outskirts of Kiev, said ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov, as Russia intensifies its shelling in Ukraine.
During the night, high-precision missiles launched by Russian planes destroyed an ammunition factory near Brovary in Kiev region.
The Russian Ministry of Defense released a video on Saturday presented as showing a meeting between the chief of the Navy and survivors of the cruiser Moskva, which sank in the Black Sea. This video shows a few dozen men in sailor uniforms lined up at attention in front of the chief of the Navy, Nikolai Yevmenov. As more Russian billionaires fled Western sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a boat linked to Russian aluminum tycoon Oleg Deripaska docked in a harbor in the southern Turkish town of Göcek on Saturday. The United States, EU, and the United Kingdom have all sanctioned Deripaska, the founder of Russian aluminum giant Rusal. He has already expressed his desire for peace. In the debate about the delivery of tanks and other heavy weapons to Ukraine, Federal Minister of Justice Marco Bushman points out that under international law, this would not mean entering the war against Russia. At the same time, the minister noted that this is not only his personal point of view, but also that of the German federal government. Under the supervision of the leader Kim Jong-un, North Korea has test-fired a new weapon system that it claims will boost the efficiency of its tactical nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un observed the test of the new tactical guided weapon that will increase long-range artillery firepower and improve the operating efficiency of the country's tactical nuclear weapons. Boris Johnson will travel to India this week for the first time as a Prime Minister, after a protracted wait in order to enhance security relations with the nation. The UK has been attempting to encourage India to lessen its dependence on Moscow. Johnson will also meet with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi in New Delhi, where they will discuss defense and trade. Last weekend, Imran Khan, Pakistan's Prime Minister, was removed by a no-confidence vote in Parliament, only days after he successfully thwarted a similar attempt. Millions of his supporters disagreed on the court decision, and they had shown loyalty to their leader. Sofyan Kinturi reports.
Prime Minister Imran Khan was driven out of power last weekend by parliamentary maneuver. He had been criticized by the opposition for mismanaging the economy. Mr. Khan is already mobilizing his fans to demand his dismissal. Imran had already blamed foreign intervention for his final removal, and he claimed once more that there had been a huge international plot against this country.
What have I done wrong to America? I just answered when they asked me in an interview, do you want to provide us with an air base? Which means, do you want to help us to start new against the Afghans? And I said, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Pakistani with one voice screaming, "We want Imran as PM again." According to protesters, Khan gave his followers the spirit of being independent and the taste of freedom, so they do not trust the new government and scared of losing these advantages that they used to have it in Imran era.
We don't want to live a life of servants and don't want to be someone's servants. We are an independent nation and we are here to be independent. We won't follow what they order.
Some supporters also accuse the Pakistan's most powerful institution, which is the army, of aiding its downfall and robbing Khan of his position.
According to Indian authorities, clashes erupted during a Hindu religious procession in New Delhi, hurting numerous individuals, including police officers. This came days after similar religious violence erupted in the streets, or three states. According to eyewitnesses, violence broke out between Muslims and Hindus during a parade in a neighborhood in New Delhi on Saturday, when police stated they were still looking into the incident. As worshippers assembled for early morning prayers, Zionist forces stormed Al-Aqsa mosque compound 2 days after holding hundreds at the site in another raid. At least 17 individuals were injured. 3 people were taken to the hospital after being assaulted or injured by rubber-coated bullets, according to the Palestinian Red Cross. The Biden administration declared that it will resume selling leases to drill for oil and gas on federal land starting from next week. According to the Interior Department, the administration will make reduction in the number of lands offered and will make an increase in the royalties companies who must pay to drill. The move comes amid growing pressure for the Biden administration to do more to lower gas prices, with Republicans in particular saying it should allow more drilling. Several trade unions joined the protesters who took position in front of the seat of the presidency for the 8th consecutive day, demanding the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his government. Miriam Zian in the following.
After hiking interest rates and declaring a default on its external debt during the traditional New Year holiday, Sri Lanka announced a 5-day stock market halt on Saturday. Thousands of trade workers marched to Galface Promenade to join activists laying siege to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's seafront office for the 8th consecutive day Saturday, demanding that he and his administration resign.
We came to the Galface to join with this youth struggle. Today is the 8th day of our youth struggle, asking the Rajapaksa regiment to go home, but they are not listening to the people, they are not listening.
The decision comes ahead of Colombo's expected discussions with the International Monetary Fund in Washington to discuss a loan, since the government has run out of foreign exchange to cover even basic imports. The island country is experiencing its worst economic crisis since its independence, with regular blackouts, severe food and fuel shortages, and record inflation. The crisis has wreaked havoc on Sri Lanka's 22 million people, sparking weeks of anti-government demonstrations. This recession is due to COVID-19 pandemic, which deprived this South Asian island of its tourism, but it was also worsened by a series of bad political decisions, according to economists. And to reform the situation, the government imposed an import embargo to protect its foreign exchange reserves and use them for debt servicing.
Demonstrators gathered in Paris to protest against presidential candidates Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen as part of national mobilization against the far right 8 days before the second round of the presidential election. Osama Yadi has more details in the following.
As the French presidential election enters the final week of campaign, thousands of French citizens took to the street to show their wrath and disagreement, marching across France in an anti-far-right movement.
Here we go, seeing this Macron-Le Pen second round which is established, it scares me. And there is a lot of anger in the face of projects that do not correspond to me, and in the face of the rise of the far-right, which really scares me.
France, which is witnessing many political issues in its diplomatic relations with many countries, saw thousands of people gathered chanting anti-far-right slogans in central Paris and warning of democratic upheaval if Le Pen were to win. Protesters who showed their refusal to Marine Le Pen's announced policy in the campaign did not accept the policy of the European Union centrist Emmanuel Macron either. However, most of them showed the principle of better a vote that stinks than a vote that kills.
I want to say to Macron and to all those who ask us to block that we're not fooled. And that if I am going to block, I'm not fooled by the fact that if it was a strategy, that they have done everything to ensure that Marine Le Pen is in front of them. And I'm not fooled by the fact that liberalism will not get us out of the crisis, and that the Macronian logic, the ideology that this man carries, is responsible for the rise of the far right.
Manifestors had many clashes with police and security forces, who fired tear gas to disperse the crowds gathered in several French cities. Most protesters in streets stated that their proclamation is for the protection of their freedom, economy and climate matters, explaining that the reach of Le Pen to power would be a great regression to their country.
We must not forget that Marine Le Pen has tried to demonize her party, but she still carries ideas which are dangerous, which are extreme, which are racist, xenophobic, homophobic, and we cannot let that go by fact. So, you really have to realize that this woman is dangerous and not let yourself be destabilized by a speech that can be demonized.
Anti-far-right protesters were in different regions of France, including Marseille, Lyon and the capital Paris, making it clear that neither Le Pen nor Macron are the right people for the highest position in France.
Counter-demonstrators gathered against the intention of a small right-wing group to ban a Quran in Örebro, in central Sweden. Clashes have erupted with police, which caused 9 injuries among police officers. It was the second day in a row that clashes took place on the sidelines of assembly of the anti-immigration and anti-Islamic movement, so-called Hardline, led by the Danish-Swedish Rasmus Paludan. And it is expected to be gathering again on Saturday in another city in the south of the Scandinavian kingdom. A ship carrying 750 tons of fuel sank off the coast of Tunisia on Friday evening. The crew of the Cello vessel sent a distress call and sought refuge in Tunisian waters in the Gulf of Gabes in the next morning, where it sank. Islam said in this report.
A tanker carrying 750 tons of diesel oil, which left Egypt heading to Malta, sank on Saturday morning in the Gulf of Gabes, on the southeast coast of Tunisia. But the authorities believe they can avoid major pollution, who said the situation is being under control.
It's a shipment of fuel oil or diesel oil. This is very different from fuel oil, and that fuel oil is much less dangerous and tends to evaporate quite quickly.
The Gabes court opened an investigation into the sinking and said that the first findings showed minimal leaks on the ship. The 58 meters long tanker had asked to enter Tunisian territorial waters on Friday evening due to bad weather conditions. While about 7 kilometers off the coast of the Gulf of Gabes, the tanker began to take on water. The latter entered the engine room, rising to nearly 2 meters in height. Tunisian authorities then evacuated the crew of 7 people on board the ship. As a precaution, anti-pollution barriers were put in place around the perimeter of the shipwreck, monitored by the military and approachable to the press.
We wait for the weather to be better, especially at the level of the wind and the swell, to allow divers to check with more certainty the condition of the hull and the condition of the cargo, and proceed the necessary measures such as pumping and bring in the vessel closer to shore in order to secure both the cargo, the engine oils and everything else.
The local office of the World Wildlife Fund said it is afraid of a new environmental catastrophe in the region and called experts to study the extent of the impact of the incident on maritime fishing activity and seafarers' incomes.
People are gathering outside the inside prison in Rangoon, hoping to see their loved ones again after the Burmese junta has declared that it would release more than 1,600 prisoners from the country's prisons to mark the Buddhist New Year.
My daughter was arrested on April 25, 2021, and sent for interrogation. She arrived in this prison on May 5, 2021. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison for political charges. Now she's been in prison for over a year. Even though my daughter is only 19, she's very active in politics. I am proud of her. I am waiting outside the prison with the hope that my daughter will be released.
Somalia's newly elected parliament is meeting for the first time after a long-delayed electoral process, bringing the war-torn nation one step closer to completing the long process of nominating a new president. A parliament has chosen a 10-member committee that will work to hold a presidential election in the coming days.
One of the first tasks that we must accomplish quickly is to work for the election of the new president and his 2 deputies. Today we have chosen a community of 10 members who will work to organize the elections of the president and his deputies.
Firefighters and residents fought a massive blaze in which they tried to put it out with all means. The fire broke out and ravaged a cabin facility in a town in Cape Town in South of Africa. However, nothing has been revealed who or what might cause the fire. Residents are getting tested for COVID-19 in a confined residential area of Shanghai. China's economic capital is currently facing its worst outbreak since the start of the pandemic, and almost all of its 25 million inhabitants have been confined since the beginning of April, with difficulties in accessing food. And before we wrap it up, here's a reminder of our top stories. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns that the elimination of the last Ukraine soldiers present in the port city of Mariupol would put an end to all negotiations with Moscow. North Korea has test-fired a new weapon system that it claims will boost the efficiency of its tactical nuclear weapons. As worshippers assembled for early morning prayers, Zionist forces stormed the Al-Aqsa mosque compound 2 days after holding hundreds at the site in another raid. And with this, our news ends. Thank you for tuning into our channel. Bye for now.